The slap echoed louder than the auctioneer's hammer. My head snapped to the side. The metallic taste of blood spread across my tongue as my father grabbed my collar and forced me back to my knees in front of nearly 100 guests. "Lower your head," he hissed through clenched teeth. "You're embarrassing me." "I already signed everything," I whispered. Then smile. Laughter rippled across the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, while the city's wealthiest families watched as though tonight's entertainment wasn't a charity gala, but my humiliation. On the giant screen behind us, one sentence glowed in elegant gold letters. Exclusive guardianship agreement. Beneath it, transferor, Victor Hale. Recipient, Miss Evelyn Ashcroft. And beneath that, asset, Adrian Hale. Asset, not son, not heir, not human. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Mr. Hale has voluntarily transferred all contractual obligations regarding his son's debt and guardianship to Miss Ashcroft. Applause followed. I didn't clap. I couldn't even breathe. My father leaned closer. "You owe me 15 years. I was 17. You were expensive." Every word landed colder than the last. My mother had died when I was 12. Since then, I believed every overtime shift, every scholarship, every sacrifice was helping our family survive. I never knew my father had borrowed millions gambling on impossible business deals. I never knew he'd forged my signature on loan guarantees. I never knew that I had been collateral. The auctioneer smiled politely. "Miss Ashcroft, do you accept the transfer?" Every eye turned toward the woman seated alone in the front row. She looked younger than I expected. 26, maybe. Black dress, silver earrings, perfect posture. Her expression never changed. She didn't look pleased. She didn't look cruel. She looked tired. "As agreed," she answered calmly. A lawyer handed her a fountain pen. She signed without hesitation. The room erupted into applause. My father laughed for the first time in months. "It's over," he muttered. No, it was only beginning. Outside, rain hammered against the marble staircase. 2 security guards escorted me toward a black sedan. My father didn't come outside. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even look through the window. The only thing he left behind was his voice. "Don't come back." The words followed me into the rain. I stood beside the open car door without moving. One guard nudged me. "Get in." I stared back at the mansion where I'd spent 18 years believing family meant protection. Every light remained on. Every curtain remained closed. It was as though I had never existed. The rear window lowered. "Mr. Hale." Her voice was calm. "Sit down before you catch pneumonia." I climbed inside. The silence between us stretched for several blocks. Leather seats. Fresh jasmine. The faint sound of rain against tinted glass. She never looked at me. Neither did I. Finally she spoke. "Are you hungry?" I frowned. "What? Hungry?" After everything that had happened. That was her first question. "I don't know. You haven't eaten today." "How would you know?" "I had someone watching the gala since noon." That answer unsettled me. "You investigated me?" "I investigated what I was purchasing." The word stung. Purchasing. She noticed. "I'm aware you dislike that term. You bought me. I paid your legal debt. You bought me." Her fingers rested on a folder in her lap. "No." She looked out the window. "I bought your freedom." I almost laughed. "Freedom?" I couldn't even leave the car. "You signed ownership papers. They're enforceable because your father signed away custodial authority connected to his debt obligations. So, I'm a prisoner." "No." She finally turned toward me. "You're under my protection." I searched her face for mockery. Found none. "What's the difference?" She answered quietly. "Prisoners aren't allowed to refuse dinner." The car stopped outside a quiet restaurant. No photographers. No bodyguards waiting outside. No spectacle. She stepped out first. "I won't force you." I remained inside. Seconds passed. She simply stood in the rain. Waiting. Not ordering. Waiting. Something about that irritated me even more than commands would have. Eventually I climbed out. "Congratulations," I muttered. "You won." She looked genuinely confused. I wasn't competing. The restaurant was nearly empty. She chose a corner booth. Ordered tea. Ordered enough food for 4 people. Then pushed every plate toward me without touching any herself. I stared. "Aren't you eating?" "I already did." Then why order this much? You look like someone who hasn't had a proper meal in weeks. I hated that she was right. I picked up the chopsticks. Stopped. What do you want from me? She folded her hands. The truth. I doubt I'd recognize it anymore. A faint smile appeared. The truth is inconvenient. Try me. I don't need another servant. My grip tightened. I never said, I don't need gratitude. She continued before I could interrupt. I don't need affection. Then what? I need someone alive. The answer hung between us. Alive. She nodded once. If I hadn't signed those papers tonight, your father's creditors planned to sell your labor overseas under private contracts. I froze. They can't do that. They already arranged transportation. No. She slid the folder toward me. Inside were copies. Shipping manifests. Debt transfers. Photographs. Signatures. My father's signature. Again. 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 Each page stripped away another illusion. By the final document, my hands were shaking. I couldn't finish. She completed the sentence for me. He never intended for you to come home. The restaurant felt colder after that. I stared at the documents until the words blurred together. Cargo schedules. International labor agreements disguised as employment placements. A passport application I had never filed. Even a forged medical clearance. Every page carried my father's signature. Every page carried my name. I don't understand, I said hoarsely. I worked. I studied. I paid every cent I earned back home. Evelyn watched me quietly. I know. Then why? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she poured tea into my untouched cup. Steam curled upward. You've been asking the wrong question. I looked up. The question isn't why he sold you. She met my eyes. The question is why he needed to. Silence swallowed the booth. My father had inherited my grandfather's construction company. It wasn't enormous, but it had once been respected. Growing up, I believed we were struggling because business had become difficult. That wasn't true. According to the papers spread across the table, he had gambled away contracts, sold equipment, borrowed against future projects, borrowed against the house, borrowed against insurance policies, borrowed against me. You investigated all this? I investigate everyone who owes my company money. Your company? Ashcroft Capital. I recognize the name. Every news channel talked about it. Real estate, technology, finance. The corporation that quietly rescued collapsing businesses before rebuilding them into something stronger. I looked at her differently. So this wasn't personal. No. She held my gaze. But now it is. That answer left me strangely uneasy. What? She leaned back. Because I dislike waste. I'm waste. I think your father wasted your life. I didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. Before I could decide, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. Her expression hardened. What is it? I asked. She ignored the call. It rang again. Again. Finally, she answered. Yes. Whoever spoke made her eyes narrow. No. A pause. I already signed. Another pause. Her voice became colder. I don't renegotiate with liars. She ended the call. I swallowed. My father. She nodded once. He wants you back. I laughed. The sound surprised even me. He threw me away 2 hours ago. He claims there was a misunderstanding. There wasn't. I know. She slipped the phone into her handbag. He offered to repay the money. My laughter stopped. He doesn't have money. He doesn't. Then why? He suddenly found an investor. Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. That's bad. It depends. On what? On who wants you. The words settled like ice beneath my skin. Someone else. Someone with enough money to outbid Evelyn Ashcroft. I suddenly remembered the applause. The auctioneer. The wording. Transfer. Agreement. There had been multiple interested parties. I hadn't been imagining things. I wasn't merely sold. People had competed to acquire me. The thought made me sick. I need some air. She didn't stop me. Outside, rain still fell across empty streets. The city lights reflected in puddles like broken glass. I stood beneath the restaurant awning, tried to breathe. Who was I now? Not a son, not a student, not even free. The door opened behind me. Evelyn stepped outside, holding an umbrella. She didn't hand it to me. She simply stood beside me, shielding us both from the rain. My lawyers have prepared temporary housing. I'm not moving into your mansion. I don't own one. I blinked. You don't. I prefer apartments. That wasn't the answer I'd expected. You keep ruining my assumptions. I'll try harder, despite everything. The corner of my mouth almost moved. Almost. Her phone rang again. This time she frowned before answering. What happened? She listened for several seconds. Then every trace of calm disappeared. When? Another pause. I'm on my way. She hung up and looked at me. We have to leave. What happened? Your father's company. My heartbeat quickened. What about it? It caught fire. I stared. What? The entire headquarters. Is anyone? We don't know yet. She was already walking toward the car. I followed without thinking. Halfway there, she stopped. There's something else. What? She looked directly into my eyes. The fire started in the records department. I frowned. So every document proving how you were transferred. She paused. May have just become someone's first target. The sedan doors unlocked with a sharp click. As I climbed inside, a single terrifying realization settled over me. If someone was willing to burn down an entire company, then selling me had never been the real story. I had simply been the first move. The smell reached us before the flames did. Burned plastic, wet concrete, charred paper. By the time Evelyn's sedan turned on a Hawthorne Avenue, the entire block was flooded with flashing red lights. Firefighters shouted over the roar of water cannons while thick smoke climbed into the night sky like a black curtain swallowing the stars. My father's company stood at the center of it all, or what was left of it. The front facade still stood, but every window behind it glowed with orange embers. I pushed the car door open before it had fully stopped. Adrian. Evelyn caught my wrist. Wait. My father could still be inside. Listen. I froze. There were no screams. No frantic search teams. Only firefighters containing the blaze. A police officer jogged toward us. Miss Ashcroft. She nodded. Casualties. No confirmed fatalities. Relief hit me, so suddenly that my knees almost gave out. Then the officer added quietly, the building was nearly empty. I frowned. What do you mean? The night staff was dismissed almost an hour before the fire. An hour. Not 10 minutes. Not 5. An hour. Someone had cleared the building. Evelyn's expression darkened. Intentional. The officer gave a slow nod. We believe so. He lowered his voice. The records archive is completely destroyed. Exactly where the ownership documents had been stored. My chest tightened. Someone hadn't merely started a fire. They had erased evidence. Police tape surrounded the entrance. As we approached, a familiar voice cut through the noise. There he is. I turned. My father. His expensive suit was stained with soot, but his watch gleamed as brightly as ever. The moment he saw me, tears filled his eyes. Real tears. Or convincing ones. Adrian. He rushed forward with open arms. Instinct made me step back. His smile faltered. My son, you told me not to come back. His face stiffened for a fraction of a second before sorrow returned. I was angry. You sold me. I was desperate. You signed shipping contracts. I didn't know what they meant. Lies. Every sentence came too quickly. He reached for my shoulder. I've been looking everywhere. I was sitting in a restaurant less than 3 miles away. His hand stopped midair. Behind me, Evelyn said nothing. She simply watched, observing. My father shifted his attention toward her. Miss Ashcroft. She remained calm. Mr. Hale, I like my son back. You transferred your legal authority. I'll repay every cent. With whose money? His jaw tightened. That isn't your concern. It became my concern when you forged documents. Several detectives glanced our way. My father noticed. His tone softened instantly. I made mistakes. No, Evelyn replied. You made choices. He looked at me again. Adrian, tell her. I stared at him. For years I believed every lie you told. He swallowed. I worked 3 jobs because you said the company needed saving. Silence. I skipped university trips because you couldn't afford them. Silence. I sold mom's jewelry because you promised we'd buy back. He lowered his eyes. And tonight, my voice cracked. You call me an expense. For the first time in my life, I saw something in his expression that wasn't love. Calculation. He wasn't trying to save his son. He was trying to recover an asset. I forgive you, I said quietly. His face brightened. But I'm not going home. The smile vanished. You don't understand. No. I took one slow step backward. I finally do. As detectives began questioning witnesses, Evelyn guided me toward the opposite side of the street. You handle that well. I don't feel well. You don't have to. We stood in silence, watching firefighters break through another wall. Then a man in a gray overcoat approached. Older, perhaps 60. Sharp eyes. He ignored me completely. Miss Ashcroft, Director Chun. They shook hands. I recognized the name. Government Financial Crimes Division. He looked toward the burning building. Interesting timing. Very. You expected this? I hoped I was wrong. He handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it. Read. Closed it again. What is it? I asked. She hesitated, then passed it to me. Inside was a single photograph. My breath caught. It showed me. Not tonight. Not last week. Months ago. Walking out of university. Another photo. Working in a warehouse. Another. Visiting my mother's grave. Someone had been following me. For months. I looked up. Who took these? Director Chin answered. We don't know. My stomach turned. There are over 200. 200. Not random surveillance. Systematic observation. Evelyn folded the photographs. You weren't collateral. I looked at her. You were the objective. Sleep refused to come. Evelyn's apartment overlooked the river, its floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a skyline washed silver by dawn. It was elegant without being extravagant, quiet without feeling empty. She had given me the guest room. No guards outside the door. No locks. No instructions. Only one sentence before retiring for the night. If you decide to leave, tell me first so I know where to search. Not stop. Search. The difference lingered in my mind long after she disappeared into her office. I sat on the edge of the bed, the stack of surveillance photographs spread across the blanket. University, bus stops, libraries, cafes, even a small bakery where I bought bread every Thursday after work. Whoever had watched me knew my routines better than I did. There was a knock. Come in. Evelyn entered carrying 2 mugs. You should eat. I'm not hungry. I wasn't asking. She set toast and scrambled eggs on the desk anyway. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, I picked up one photograph. Why me? I've been asking the same question. You still don't know? She shook her head. I know who benefited from buying your father's debt. Who? I didn't. The answer caught me off guard. I purchased it because someone else was desperate to obtain it first. I frowned. So you interfered? Yes. You didn't even know me. No. Then why risk millions? She looked toward the window. Sometimes the only way to discover the truth is to prevent someone else's plan. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Director Chun. She answered on speaker. They found something. What? The fire wasn't the only incident tonight. Evelyn's expression sharpened. Go on. Someone broke into the city's document archive. I exchanged a glance with her. What were they looking for? She asked. We're not sure. A pause. However, Director Chen's voice lowered. They ignored every financial record. What did they steal? Birth certificates. The room fell silent. My pulse quickened. Which ones? Only one. Another pause. Yours. The mug slipped from my fingers. It shattered across the hardwood floor. I barely heard it. My birth certificate? Yes. Director Chun continued. The original hospital record disappeared years ago. Evelyn slowly looked at me. The copy stored by the city was stolen tonight. Why would anyone? I stopped. My own question answered itself. Someone had erased the transfer documents. Now they had stolen proof of my birth. Not money. Not property. Me. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. I was 8 years old. My mother kneeling beside my bed after a nightmare. Her hand brushing my hair back. If anything ever feels wrong, Adrian, trust what people do, not what they say. At the time, I hadn't understood. Now those words settled into my chest like a key finding its lock. My father had always said he loved me. His actions had said something else entirely. Evelyn's voice pulled me back. We're leaving. Where? The hospital where you were born. Now, if someone is destroying records. She met my eyes. We're already late. As we hurried toward the elevator, my phone vibrated for the first time since the gala. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello. For several seconds, only breathing. Then a calm male voice spoke. You shouldn't trust Evelyn Ashcroft. My grip tightened. Who is this? Ask her why she knew your name before she bought your father's debt. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. Evelyn noticed my expression. What happened? I looked at her. The question echoed in my head. Why did she know my name? For the first time since leaving my father's house. I wasn't sure which truth would hurt more. The elevator doors slid open before either of us spoke. I stepped inside first. Evelyn followed, pressing the lobby button with the same composed expression she always wore. But now I noticed a tiny crack beneath it. Her fingers tightened around her phone. She was waiting for me to ask. I didn't disappoint her. How did you know my name? Silence. The elevator hummed downward. I asked you something. I know. Then answer. She exhaled slowly. When? Before the gala. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at the glowing floor numbers. 5 years ago. My heart skipped. What? I first heard your name 5 years ago. I'd never met you. No. Then why were you looking into me? I wasn't. The doors opened into the underground garage. Neither of us moved. Finally, she continued. I was investigating your mother. My chest tightened. My mother? Yes. The word struck harder than my father's slap. My mother died 6 years ago. I know. So why investigate her? Because she tried to contact my grandfather. I stared. What? 3 weeks before she died. The garage suddenly felt too small. My mother never mentioned your family. I doubt she had the chance. She walked toward the sedan. I found her name while reviewing old legal correspondence. I caught up. Why didn't you tell me? Because I had no proof. And now someone is burning records connected to your identity. She unlocked the car. I think your mother discovered something before she died. The hospital archive occupied the basement of an aging brick building scheduled for demolition. Director Chun was already waiting. 2 detectives stood beside a shattered security door. They came 20 minutes ago, he said. They? 3 people. Masked. He nodded. They ignored medication storage. They ignored payroll. They ignored patient records. What do they take? Evelyn asked. Chen's face darkened. Only maternity files. My pulse quickened. Mine. And 11 others. He handed me a list. Every birth occurred within the same week. Same hospital. Different families. Different surnames. Different neighborhoods. No obvious connection. Except one. Every child had been born during a city-wide power outage. I frowned. That can't be coincidence. Chen nodded. We don't think it is. We entered the archive. Broken cabinets littered the floor. Folders had been ripped apart. Pages scattered like autumn leaves. An elderly archivist sat wrapped in a blanket, still trembling. She looked at me strangely. Then tears filled her eyes. It's you. I froze. You remember me? You had blue mittens. I blinked. What? When your mother brought you back every birthday. Every birthday? My mother stopped bringing me after I turned 6. The woman slowly shook her head. No. You came until you were 12. I couldn't breathe. I didn't. You did. She looked genuinely confused. You always waited in the garden while your mother met someone downstairs. Someone? What person? I never knew. Man, I think so. You saw him. Only once. She frowned, struggling to remember. He had a cane. Director Chun and Evelyn exchanged a glance. A cane? Chun asked. The archivist nodded. Silver handle. Evelyn's expression changed. You know who that is? She answered without looking at me. I know who owned one. Who? My grandfather. No one spoke during the drive back. Rain streaked across the windshield in uneven lines, blurring the city into shifting lights and shadows. My thoughts were worse. My mother. Hospital visits. A man with a silver-handled cane. Evelyn's grandfather. Nothing fit together. Finally, I broke the silence. Your grandfather has been dead for 3 years. Yes. So how could he know my mother? He knew many people. That's not an answer. No. She gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. It isn't. When we reached her apartment building, Director Chen called. Evelyn answered immediately. We found the hospital's backup server, and it wasn't erased. Hope flickered, but someone copied the files yesterday. Yesterday, before the fire. My stomach sank. They were ahead of us. Yes. Chun hesitated. There is something else. What? We identified one of the vehicles leaving the hospital. Evelyn slowed the car. Registered to whom? A company called Meridian Holdings. She closed her eyes briefly. I was afraid of that. I frowned. You know them. They're the investor who suddenly offered your father enough money to buy you back. The words landed heavily. So the investor and the thieves. Likely connected. Back in the apartment, Evelyn unlocked a small wall safe hidden behind a painting. She removed a thick leather journal. Its edges were worn with age. My grandfather's. She placed it in front of me. Read page 87. My hands trembled as I opened it. Most entries discussed investments, negotiations, political dinners. Then I reached the marked page. A single paragraph. A woman named Claire Hale came today. She fears her son is in danger because of something that happened during the blackout births. She refused money. She only wanted protection. Claire, my mother. I swallowed hard. The next sentence made my blood run cold. If anything happens to her, the boy must never learn the truth until he is old enough to survive it. The journal ended there. I stared at the page for a long time. What truth? I don't know, Evelyn admitted quietly. Before I could answer, every light in the apartment went out. Darkness. Complete. Then, the emergency generator failed too. Evelyn immediately stepped in front of me. Stay behind me. A sharp crack echoed from somewhere below. Not thunder. Glass breaking. Someone was inside the building. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Moving upward. Toward our floor. A phone screen lit the darkness. An unknown message flashed across mine. Stop searching. Another message arrived before I could react. The next fire won't be empty. Someone pounded once against the apartment door. Then, a key turned in the lock. The lock clicked. Once. Twice. Then the handle began to turn. Evelyn didn't move. She stood between me and the door, one arm slightly extended as if she could stop whoever entered through sheer force of will. Another slow turn. The deadbolt held. A third attempt. Then silence. I could hear my own heartbeat. A soft vibration came from Evelyn's phone. She glanced at the screen, the faint glow illuminating her face. Chun, she answered in a whisper. We've traced the building's security feed. What happened? It was cut from inside. My stomach tightened. Can you see who's outside our apartment? A pause. No. Another pause. But the person used an employee access card. Evelyn looked toward the door. They're not guessing. They know exactly where we are. The footsteps retreated. Not hurried. Not panicked. Calm. Confident. As if they knew they'd be back. The emergency power returned 20 minutes later. Police searched every floor. Nothing. No fingerprints. No broken locks. Only one missing item. The building superintendent's master key. Director Chen arrived just before sunrise. They wanted to frighten you. They succeeded, I admitted. He nodded. Good. I frowned. Good. If they wanted you dead. He looked toward the apartment door. They wouldn't have knocked. The realization settled heavily over the room. Whoever was behind this wanted pressure. Not murder. At least. Not yet. Chen placed a folder on the table. We've identified Meridian Holdings. I opened it. The company's website looked legitimate. Construction. Logistics. Investment. Everything polished. Everything respectable. Then I reached the ownership records. Every shareholder had resigned within the past year. Every director was a temporary appointment. Every trail ended at shell corporations. Only one signature appeared consistently. Lucas Mercer. I looked up. Who is he? Chen answered quietly. A financial strategist. Evelyn corrected him. A ghost. Chen nodded reluctantly. He never owns anything directly. Has anyone seen him? Very few. And those who did, Chen met my eyes. They either disappeared, he paused, or changed their testimony. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. That afternoon, we visited my mother's old lawyer. His office occupied the second floor of a fading brick building squeezed between a bookstore and a tailor. A brass plaque read, Harold Bennett, Family Law. He looked almost 80. When he saw me, the color drained from his face. Adrian, you remember me? I hoped I'd never have to. I frowned. What does that mean? He closed his office door, locked it, then slowly removed an old wooden box from a filing cabinet. I promised your mother. My breathing slowed. Promise what? That I'd give this to you only if someone came looking for your birth records. Every muscle in my body tensed. He pushed the box toward me. Inside lay a sealed envelope. Across the front, written in my mother's handwriting. For Adrian. Only when they began asking questions. My fingers trembled. I hadn't seen her handwriting in 6 years. I looked at Bennett. You never mailed it? She specifically forbade it. Why? Because she believed you'd only be safe if you remained ignorant. Safe. Everyone kept using that word. I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single letter and a photograph. The photograph showed my mother. Young, smiling, standing beside Evelyn's grandfather. I couldn't breathe. The photograph slipped from my fingers onto Harold Bennett's desk. My mother looked genuinely happy. Not frightened. Not desperate. Happy. Beside her stood Arthur Ashcroft, Evelyn's grandfather, his silver-handled cane resting against one leg. They weren't strangers. They weren't enemies. They looked like old friends. Evelyn stared at the picture in stunned silence. I've never seen this before. Neither had I. I unfolded my mother's letter. Her handwriting was steady, elegant, almost peaceful. Adrian, if you're reading this, then someone has finally decided you are more valuable than your silence. My chest tightened. You will hear many lies about me. Some will say I stole. Others will say I betrayed powerful people. Believe none of them. I swallowed hard and continued. Years before you were born, Arthur Ashcroft and I uncovered a network that used bankrupt families to hide children whose identities had been altered for financial gain. My pulse pounded in my ears. Identity. Altered? The next lines blurred before I forced myself to focus. During the citywide blackout, several newborn records were changed. Some children disappeared. Others were placed into different families. We gathered evidence. We failed to expose them. Harold Bennett quietly sat down. Even he seemed to be reading the letter for the first time. I kept going. Arthur protected what evidence he could. I protected you. My vision began to shake. Victor never knew the entire truth. He only knew that powerful people occasionally asked whether you were still alive. I lowered the page. My father had never known. Evelyn stepped closer. What else? I looked at the final paragraph. Then everything inside me went still. Adrian, Victor Hale is not your biological father. Silence. Absolute silence. No one moved. No one spoke. I read the sentence again and again. The words refused to become real. Harold Bennett slowly removed his glasses. I suspected. You knew. I knew Victor signed no hospital documents. I stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because your mother begged me not to. My hands clenched around the letter. So who is my father? Bennett slowly shook his head. I don't know. Director Chin's phone rang. He answered immediately. What happened? His expression changed. When? He listened for several seconds, then looked directly at Evelyn. They've arrested Victor Hale. I stood up. For what? Insurance fraud. A strange feeling settled over me. Not satisfaction. Not relief. Only emptiness. Chun continued. He confessed to setting the fire. I blinked. He admitted it? Yes. Evelyn frowned. No. Chun looked confused. What? He didn't do it. Adrian's father confessed. He confessed too quickly. She turned toward me. Someone is cleaning up loose ends. Before anyone could respond, Bennett's office windows exploded inward. Glass filled the room. A single bullet buried itself in the bookshelf, exactly where I'd been standing moments earlier. Someone outside wasn't trying to scare us anymore. Someone had decided silence had become too expensive. The sound of shattering glass hadn't faded before Evelyn shoved me to the floor. Another shot tore through the office. The bookshelf behind us erupted into splinters. Down! Director Chin shouted, drawing his service pistol. Harold Bennett crawled behind his desk, one hand pressed against his chest. I'm fine, he insisted, though his face had gone pale. Chen moved carefully toward the broken window. Single shooter, he muttered. No, Evelyn replied. What? They're leaving. A black SUV accelerated away from the curb below. By the time police reached the street, it had disappeared into afternoon traffic. The attack had lasted less than 15 seconds. It wasn't meant to kill everyone. It had been aimed at one place. The letter. I looked down. The pages were still clutched in my hands. Only then did I realize Evelyn had thrown herself directly into the shooter's line of fire to protect me. A thin line of blood ran down her left forearm. You've been hit. She glanced at the wound. It's only glass. It needs stitches. It can wait. No. For the first time since we had met, I spoke firmly enough that she actually stopped arguing. It can't. Something softened in her expression. All right. The emergency clinic was unusually quiet. The doctor cleaned the cut while I sat across the room, replaying the last few minutes over and over. She could have stayed behind me. She didn't. She could have run. She didn't. When the doctor left, the silence lingered. Finally, I asked the question that had been growing inside me. Why? Evelyn looked up. Why what? You protected me. I said I would. You barely knew me. I know enough. No. I shook my head. That's not enough to take a bullet. It wasn't a bullet. You didn't know that. She smiled faintly. No. I looked at the bandage wrapped around her arm. My father never stood in front of me. The words escaped before I could stop them. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched the rain outside the clinic window. You spent your whole life believing protection had to be earned. I looked away. You don't. No. Her voice remained calm. I think people deserve protection simply because they're people. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Something inside me shifted. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just enough that the apartment she had offered no longer felt like a cage. It felt safe. 3 days later, Victor Hale requested to see me. Director Chen advised against it. Evelyn said the decision was mine. For the first time in years, someone left the choice to me. I went. The detention room smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. My father sat behind the glass divider, wearing a gray prison uniform that seemed far too large for him. He looked older, smaller. When he saw me, tears filled his eyes. Adrian. I remained standing. I don't have much time. I never wanted this. I said nothing. They forced me. Who? He looked toward the security camera. I can't say. You already confessed. I confessed because they threatened you. My chest tightened. They said if I stayed quiet. His voice broke. They'd leave you alone. And the fire? I didn't start it. I know. He looked surprised. You believe me? I believe you finally ran out of lies. He laughed bitterly. I suppose I did. For several moments, he simply stared at his hands. Then he whispered something I never expected to hear. I wasn't supposed to become your father. Every muscle in my body went rigid. What? They brought you home. They? I don't know their names. You signed my birth certificate. They told me to. My breathing became uneven. Why? Because Claire begged me. My mother, she said you needed a name. He closed his eyes. I loved her. I know. I wasn't enough. I know. I loved you too. The words hung painfully between us. I answered honestly. I think you did. Hope flickered across his face. But love isn't what you say. His shoulders fell. It's what you choose. He lowered his head. And I chose badly. Yes. No anger. No shouting. Only truth. I forgive you. His body began to shake. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. He nodded slowly. I understand. As I stood to leave, he spoke one final sentence. There's a key. I turned. What key? In your mother's music box. We returned to the small house where I had grown up just before sunset. Police had already completed their search after Victor's arrest. The rooms felt strangely empty. Not because furniture was missing, because every memory now carried questions. I walked upstairs alone. My old bedroom remained almost untouched. School trophies, secondhand books, a faded photograph of my mother smiling beside the garden she'd loved so much. Her bedroom door creaked softly as I entered. The music box rested exactly where it always had, on top of her dresser. A simple wooden box carved with tiny lilies. I'd opened it dozens of times as a child just to hear the melody. Never once had I wondered whether it held anything else. I carefully lifted the velvet lining. There, hidden beneath it, a small brass key, wrapped in blue ribbon, my mother's favorite color. Evelyn stepped quietly into the room. "You found it." I nodded. Tucked beneath the key was another folded note. Only 4 words. Train station. Locker 314. Director Chun looked up immediately. "I'll arrange security." "No," I said. Both of them looked at me. "If they've been watching us this entire time." I held up the note. "They already know where we're going." Chun frowned. "That's exactly why you need protection." I smiled faintly. I know. It was the first genuine smile I'd managed in weeks. "I'm just saying we stop reacting." Evelyn folded her arms. "What do you suggest?" "We choose the time." Chun slowly nodded. "They're expecting panic. Then let's disappoint them." The next morning we entered the central train station before sunrise. Commuters hurried across polished floors, unaware that decades of secrets might be hidden beneath their feet. Locker 314 stood near the far platform. Old, paint chipped, dust gathering around its hinges. My hands trembled as I inserted the brass key. The lock clicked open. Inside rested a weathered canvas bag. Nothing more. No money. No jewels. No dramatic revelation. Just documents. Photographs. A cassette recorder. And dozens of handwritten notebooks. Evelyn carefully lifted the top notebook. Its cover read, "Blackout Children Investigation." Director Chin slowly exhaled. "This," he looked through several pages, "is enough." I frowned. Enough for what? He met my eyes. To destroy everyone who built this. I opened another folder. Inside were names. Politicians, doctors, business executives, judges. Every signature matched records Chun had spent years investigating. Near the back sat a sealed envelope, addressed simply, "For Adrian, when you no longer need saving." I looked at it for a long moment, then quietly placed it back into the bag. Evelyn looked surprised. "You aren't opening it?" I smiled. "I will. When this ends." She understood immediately. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing the past. I was choosing the future. Outside the station, morning sunlight finally broke through days of rain. It warmed my face. It didn't erase everything. It didn't undo betrayal. It didn't return my mother. But it reminded me of something she had once told me while planting flowers in our tiny garden. Storms don't ask permission before arriving. She had smiled as she brushed dirt from her hands. Neither does spring. For the first time since the gala, I believed her. The past had shaped me. It no longer owned me. And somewhere ahead, the people who had spent decades hiding behind stolen identities were about to discover that the quiet boy they had tried to erase had finally stopped running. The conference room was silent. Not because no one had arrived, because everyone had. Television cameras lined the back wall. Federal investigators occupied one side of the room. Journalists filled every remaining chair. At the center sat Director Chun. Beside him, Evelyn. And beside Evelyn, me. The canvas bag rested on the polished oak table. Untouched. For decades, people had died protecting what was inside. Today, the truth would no longer belong to the shadows. Director Chin switched on the microphone. "Thank you for attending." Flashes exploded across the room. "We are announcing the results of an investigation spanning more than 25 years. Another burst of cameras. He opened the first notebook. "The evidence recovered confirms the existence of an organized network responsible for altering birth records during the citywide blackout." A murmur swept through the audience. Photographs appeared on the projection screen. Doctors, judges, corporate executives. The same names I'd seen inside Locker 314. One by one, each supported by signatures, financial transfers, witness statements, and handwritten record from my mother and Arthur Ashcroft. There was no speculation, only evidence. No one interrupted. No one could. The truth had finally become heavier than the lies. An investigator approached Director Chun and handed him a note. He read it, looked toward me, then nodded. "The first arrests have already begun." On the screen behind him, security footage appeared. Lucas Mercer, calm as ever, walking through the lobby of Meridian Holdings. Seconds later, federal agents surrounded him. He didn't run. He simply smiled. The cameras followed as handcuffs closed around his wrists. I expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt strangely distant. For months, I had imagined this moment. Yet watching his arrest didn't heal anything. It simply ended something. Evelyn leaned toward me. Are you all right? I think so. You don't sound convinced. I spent so long wondering who ruined my life. I watched Mercer disappear into a police vehicle. Now I know, and I don't want to become someone who lets them keep ruining it. She smiled. Good. Is that enough? It has to be. The investigation continued for hours. Evidence revealed that bankrupt families have been exploited for decades. Children have been hidden, identities exchanged, inheritance claims manipulated, entire fortunes redirected through forged records. Some victims found surviving relatives. Others never would. Not every ending could be repaired. Mine included. Late that afternoon, Director Chun quietly handed me another file. We identified your biological father. I stared at the folder. For months, that answer had consumed me. Now it rested only inches away. Do you want to know? Chun asked. I looked at the envelope and slowly pushed it back. No. Both he and Evelyn looked surprised. I thought this mattered to you. It did. I smiled faintly. Now it doesn't. Chun studied me for several seconds before nodding. I understand. No. I looked around the room. I finally do. Family wasn't blood. It wasn't paperwork. It wasn't the name written on a birth certificate. Family was choice. My mother had chosen me. Arthur Ashcroft had protected me without ever asking for anything. Evelyn had stepped between me and a bullet. Those choices mattered more than genetics ever could. Spring arrived quietly. No headlines announced it. No dramatic music played. Life simply continued. Victor Hale accepted his sentence without appeal. Months later, he wrote me a single letter. It contained no excuses, only an apology. An oppressed white lily. My mother's favorite flower. I kept the flower, not because the past had disappeared, because carrying hatred any longer felt like carrying someone else's burden. Ashcroft Capital established a foundation using the recovered assets seized from Meridian Holdings. Its purpose was simple: to help families separated by fraud, exploitation, and identity crimes. Director Chin became one of its advisors after retiring from public service. Harold Bennett volunteered free legal assistance. For the first time in years, their work no longer centered on hiding secrets. It centered on restoring lives. As for me, I chose something far quieter. I returned to university, finished the degree I had almost abandoned, then joined the foundation, not as a symbol, not as a victim, but as someone who understood what it meant to lose a future before ever having the chance to choose one. Whenever frightened teenagers arrived, convinced their lives were already over, I listened first. Advice could wait. Being heard couldn't. One rainy afternoon, months after everything ended, Evelyn found me planting lilies in the small garden behind the foundation office. You always choose white ones. They remind me of my mother. She stood beside me in comfortable silence. Neither of us felt the need to fill it with unnecessary words. Finally, she asked, "Did you ever open the last envelope?" I smiled. I did. What did it say? I remembered unfolding the final letter from locker 314. Only one sentence had been written inside. Live a life no one else gets to own. I looked at the flowers. The best advice she ever gave me. Evelyn nodded. I think she'd be proud. So do I. The rain stopped. Sunlight slipped through the clouds, illuminating thousands of tiny drops resting on the white petals. For years, I had believed my life began the night my father sold me. I had been wrong. That night hadn't been the beginning of my imprisonment. It had been the beginning of my freedom. Because once I stopped begging people to love me, I finally found those who already had. And in the end, the man who had been treated like property discovered something no contract could ever buy, no fortune could ever own, and no lie could ever erase. The quiet certainty that my life belonged to me.